Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Tet Zayin. We're going to be analyzing the next few items mentioned in the Mishnah that require a full Sanhedrin of 71. So let's look back at the Mishnah, the next few items, to remind ourselves. En danin lo tashebet v'lo tenibi hasheker v'lo kohen gadol ela al pi betin shel 71, that we judge an entire tribe. Right now we're going to see what did the entire tribe do, what sin did they make. But in any case, when judging an entire tribe or a false prophet or the kohen gadol, that has to be with 71 judges. Ven motzi'in melchemet reshut ela al pi betin shel 71. When there's a decision, the king wants to go out to an optional war, then he has to get permission from the Sanhedrin. If it's an obligatory war, like a defensive war, he doesn't have to get permission. You just have to go and fight. En motzi'in et ha'ir ve'al ha'azarot ela al pi betin shel 71, in order to extend the city boundaries of Jerusalem or the courtyards of the Bet HaMikdash, one needs the Sanhedrin of 71. And osin Sanhedriyot lishvatim el al pi betin shel 71, in order to appoint lesser courts of 23 in the various villages. One needs 71. You need a 71 judge court to appoint a 23 judge court in local places. En osin irani dachat el al pi betin shel 71. An idolatrous city, we're going to talk about that actually also right now. If a whole city goes and does idolatry, then they have a special judgment, and that is done by 71. And osim irani dachat basfar velo shalosh aval osin achat o shetayim. We do not declare a city to be idolatrous and destroy it if it's a frontier, if it's on the border, because that's dangerous. We need the border cities to keep the whole country safe. And also, we do not declare to be an idachat 3 cities in a row, but rather only 1 or 2. So now we begin the Gemara. En danin v'chule hay shevet echata b'mai. When the Mishnah says that we judge a tribe with a Sanhedrin of 71, what sin did they commit? Ilem hashevet shechilelet hashabat emar depalig rachmana ben yichidim lemirubin linyan avodat kochavim b'shar mitzvot mipalig ela b'shebet shehudach. If you say that the entire tribe violated Shabbat, well, we only see that the Torah distinguishes between the law and the punishment between an individual and the public regarding avodah zarah. But do we ever see regarding any other mitzvah, Shabbat or anything else, that there's a distinction between an individual and the public? We do not see that. Rather, it must be that when the Mishnah says that we judge a tribe, we're talking about a tribe that was subverted to avodah zarah. Where do in fact we see that the Torah makes a distinction between individual and the public regarding avodah zarah? The answer is there's one law in Devarim Yod Zayin that's talking about an individual, ish or isha, that goes ahead and does avodah zarah, and the punishment for that person is sikila. Whereas in Devarim chapter 13, there it talks about ir hanidahat, and that's a case where an entire city goes and commits avodah zarah. There the punishment is they are killed by sword, and all of their material possessions are taken and put in the town square and burnt. So there you see there's a distinction between individual sinning and the public sinning. And so that's what we're learning here. This tribe, what did they do wrong that they have to be judged? It must be that they did avodah zarah, and they're going to be judged not as individuals, but rather according to the public law. So now are we to understand that entire tribe, this is more than one city, this is many cities, the whole tribe of whatever, Ephraim, goes ahead and does avodah zarah, so they get judged like an ir nidachat. Keman, who would that follow? La Rabbi Yoshia v'la Rabbi Yonatan detanya ad kama osin ir nidachat me'asara v'ad me'ah. Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Yonatan omer mi'me'ah v'ad rubo shel shebet. Well, this would not follow the opinion not of Rabbi Yoshia, not of Rabbi Yonatan, as we learn in a baraita. How many people would have to be in a city in order for it to be eligible to be judged as an ir hanidachat? 2 opinions. Rabbi Yoshia says between 10 and 100. If it's less than 10, you can't even call that a city at all. More than 100 is already too big. That's already a whole community. So it's between 10 and 100. That's a village. That if it's that's the population size. and then we go and we find out that the city has fallen to Avodah Zarah, then it gets the law of Avodah Zarah. But if it's too big, then it doesn't have the law of Ir HaNidachat. It would be a different law. Rabbi Yonatan says, no, the number is bigger. It's a city that has at least 100 people, and that maximum is that a city contains a majority of the population of the tribe. Right? A tribe might have many, many cities all around, but there might be one very big city, and if that big city has more than a majority of the population of the entire tribe, then it's not judged as in Ir HaNidachat, because that's too big. That's the two opinions. So we see that neither of these opinions can account for judging an entire tribe as a idolatrous city. Even Rabbi Yonatan, who says the larger number, he only says that you can judge a city as an idolatrous city if it's up to a majority of the population of the whole tribe. But the entire tribe, even he would say, it doesn't get the law of Ir HaNidachat. So therefore, we are rejecting this possibility. It's not that the entire tribe actually did Avodah Zarah. If the entire tribe did Avodah Zarah, they would not be judged according to the public Ir HaNidachat law, but rather as individuals. So rather, where this is talking about something else. Amar Matana, Hacha benesi shebet shechata askina. And when it says the whole tribe, it doesn't mean everybody in the tribe sinned. It actually only means one person, but the most important person, the Nasi of the tribe. If he did a sin that requires capital punishment, he is not judged by 23 as a normal capital punishment would be for a regular citizen, because he's a very important person. He is judged by the full Sanhedrin of 71. That's Ramatana's answer. Kol hadavar hagadol yaviu alecha devarav shel gadol haname gadol hu. And we can support this by the derasha of Rav Ada bar Ahava, where Yitro is telling Moshe, you have to, you can't judge everything alone. You have to appoint lower courts, and then all the great matters they will bring to you. A simple reading of that is very difficult matters. They'll deal with the easy cases, and the hard cases will come to you, Moshe. But this derasha doesn't say that. It says davar gadol is not a great matter, but rather a matter regarding a great person. That when you have a very important leader, like a Nasi of a Shevet, then he gets judged, in this case by Moshe. Application to that, when there's no Moshe, he is judged by 71. So that's what it means when a whole Shevet is judged. It means actually the one head of the Shevet. Ula amar Rabbi Elazar bebain al iske nechalot ugetuch techilata shel Eretz Yisrael ma techilata 71 af kan 71. Ula says, name of Rabbi Elazar, a different answer, that when the Mishnah says a whole tribe is judged by 71, it's talking about when the tribe comes with a suit regarding laws of inheritance. They have some kind of problem with the border, or some part of land that they are claiming as part of their shevet, and someone else is claiming as part of a different shevet. And so for that, we need 71, just like when Israel was first divided up. Just like when it was first divided up, it was done by 71 judges. So too in the future, if there's a border dispute between two tribes, then it has to be judged by 71. That's Ula's answer. We ask about that. Hold on, if you really want them to be the same, then make it exactly the same. And just like when the land of Israel was first divided, back at the time of Yeshua, it was done by lottery, and Urim v'Tumim, and all of Israel was there. So too you'll say in the future also, if there's ever some kind of land dispute between tribes, and you have to bring also the lottery and the Urim v'Tumim, and all of Israel will be there? No, I wouldn't. That's impossible. Nobody would say that. Therefore, we're rejecting this. Just like you don't need the Urim v'Tumim and the lottery, so too you don't need 71. Just because you had it there in the first division of the land doesn't mean you need all the things that are exactly the same. So therefore, we reject the answer of Ulam. We go back to the Matana, that we're talking about a sin that was done by the Nasi of a tribe. Ravina Amar Leolam b'Shevet Shehudachu Kashyalach Bedina de Rabim Daininan Le'in, Afagav de Katlinan Biyachid, Bedina de Rabim Daininan Le. Ravina says, actually, I'm going to go back to the first answer that's talking about the entire tribe that went and did Avodah Zarah. And you asked about that. Wait, does the whole tribe get killed like a ira nidachat? We saw that that's only up to a maximum population, and this would be too many people. And so you asked, that was a good question, but I have an answer for you. In fact, yes, even though we kill them as yechidim, but we judge them as a multitude. In other words, when it comes to the actual capital punishment, we're not going to go around with a sword and kill all those who did avodah zarah and take their property and burn it. That you're right. We're not going to do that because that's only if it's lower than the maximum number, as we saw the machloket, what the maximum number is before. So yes, in that sense, the punishment will be a punishment of individuals. However, the judgment will be a judgment of the multitude. Mi lo amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Yosef amar Rabbi Yoshaya v'hosetata ishahu o taishahi v'gomer ish v'ishat atam mosi lisharecha v'yatam mosi kol ha'ir kula lisharecha hachaname ish v'ishat mosi lisharecha v'yatam mosi kol shevet kolo lisharecha. And we have a derasha about this. Because Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yoshaya, when the pasuk says, this is regarding an individual did avodah zarah, that you will take that man or that woman who has done this idolatry out to the gates. So it means to the gates means to the Sanhedrin Ketana of 23 people. And so we learn from here, only if it's an individual man or individual woman, then you take him to your local Sanhedrin of 23. But you do not bring a whole city to the local court of 23. And so to here we say the same thing, that if it's an individual that does avodah zarah, then they are judged by a court of 23 and they'll be killed by sekila, as the Pesukim in Devarim 17 say. However, if it's the whole public does avodah zarah, then we see. If it's between that certain number, the minimum and maximum, it's a size of a village, then it'll be ira nidachat, and they are judged by 71. And they're killed by sword and their property is burnt. However, if it's more than that maximum number, like if it's a whole tribe, then they are judged by 71, because the public has to be judged by 71, even though the punishment will be the same as an individual punishment of sekila. The next item in the Mishnah is Lo et Nevi Hasheker Menahane Mileh. How do you know if that when there's a false prophet, it has to be judged with 71 judges? Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Atya Hazada Mi Zaken Mamre Ma Lehalan 71 Afkan be-71. So we're going to learn from the word Zadon. Let's look at the Pesukim. Here's the Pesukim in Devarim Yod Het regarding a false prophet. It says Hanavi Asher Yazid. That's the word hazada. If a person speaks presumptuously, the daber davar says something in my name and I did not tell him to do that, so then he gets the death penalty. But it doesn't say how many judges over here. In the previous chapter where it's talking about zaken mamre, it says haish asher yaseh bezadon. If someone goes up to the Supreme Court, and they tell him he doesn't know a law, and they go to the place where Hashem will choose, and that means the Supreme Court, and he has to follow whatever they say. And if he does presumptuously and he doesn't follow what the Supreme Court says, then he gets the death penalty. And so here it's clear it is the Supreme Court, because that's the whole context here. They go up to the place where Hashem will choose. That's the Supreme Court that is on Har HaBayit. And so it says the word Zadon here. So we learn from Avot a Gezerah Shavah. Just like for Zaken Mamre, that's the rebellious elder, he is involved with the court of 71. So too, the Navi Sheker is killed by a court of 71. However, we have an objection. Va'azada ki ketiba biktalahu de ketiba uktala be'asrin utlata. Wait a second. The word Zadon regarding Zaken Mamre Mamre is mentioned by his punishment, but the punishment of a Zaken Mamre is done by a court of just 23. See, there's something subtle here, which is that in order to be declared a Zaken Mamre, rebellious elder against the court and deserving of death penalty, it has to be that the Zaken Mamre went up to the Supreme Court of 71. They told him that this is the halacha, and then he went back and he gave a halachic ruling against that. So it has to be that he rebelled against something he heard from the Sanhedrin. However, when he is tried for doing that and given a verdict, he doesn't have to go back to the Sanhedrin for that. This is just a regular case of capital punishment, and he can be judged by any court of 23 to see if he's guilty of going against the Sanhedrin Hagadol of 71. So yes, it's true for the Zaken Mamre, there has to be a court of 71 involved, but that is actually involved as part of the sin. A Zaken Mamre is only a Zaken Mamre if he goes against the 71 court. If he goes against the 23 court, he shouldn't do that, but that would not be Zaken Mamre, that gets the death penalty. And so the word Zadon in the paragraph here is referring to his punishment, right? If he doesn't do that, then he will get the punishment. So if we learn from here, then all we're learning is that the verdict of Zaken Mamre is 23, and we would not have a source from here that a Navi Sheket is also 23. So this is not a good source. No, instead we're learning from the word davar that occurs earlier. Whatever the High Court 71 says, that the matter that they say that you should do, that's what you have to follow. It says the word davar here, and it says the word davar in the words that the Navi Sheker says. And so since the word davar is in the section of the sin of the rebellious elder, and the sin was done against a court of 71, that's where we learn the Gezerah Shava, that Navi Sheket also is judged by a court of 71. And now we ask, okay, fine. Now that you have opened up this Gezerah Shava, let's build on it. And so we saw that Zaken Mamre, his sin is in front of 71. We said davar, and therefore Navi Sheket is judged by 71. Well, then now why not go and use the original Gezerah Shava of Zadon and learn from Navi Sheket, just like Navi Sheket is judged by 71, that a Zaken Mamre also has to be judged by 71, right? Can't we do that? And the answer is no. Davar gemir, hazada la gemir. We learned a Gezerah Shava that regarding davar, so that we can use, but we have no tradition about a Gezerah Shava regarding the two words Zadon, and therefore we're not going to learn that, and we remain that with the law that a Zaken Mamre, although he has to sin by going against a court of 71, he is judged by a regular court of 23. Velo et Kohen Gadol. The next item in the Mishnah says that if a Kohen Gadol is judged, then he is judged in front of 71 people. What's the source? Amar Avada Barahava, Damar Kera Kol Hadavar Hagadol Yaviu Elecha Devarav Shel Gadol. It's from the Dirasha of Rav Ada Barahava that we already saw, that the Pasuk says, this is regarding Yitro. Let's go look at the Pasukim inside. Yitro tells Moshe that there's too many people here that are waiting online, and you're getting exhausted, and they're waiting a long time. So therefore, here's what you should do: that you'll appoint lower courts, and then kol hadavar hagadol yaviu elecha, ve'kol davar hakaton yishpetuhem. So literally in context, talking about a difficult matter, a great matter, they will bring to you. That's in Pasuk 22. And then later on, says that they actually did it. By Moshe listened to Kol Choteno, and he chose people, and then V'shafetu et ha'am bechol et hadavar hakasher yevi'un el Moshe, and that's what they would do. Anything that was kasher, that was difficult, they would bring to Moshe. So we have in fact two Pesukim about this, and Rav Ada Barahava is quoting the first one. It says Kol davar hagadol, and he reads it as not a great matter, but a matter of a great person. And so Kohen Gadol is a great person, so any matter that he has to be judged will not be in front of just 23, but rather in front of 71. So that's certainly talking about a capital punishment. We'll see regarding other things. Now we challenge Rav Ada Barahava from a Baraita that quotes davar gadol, and says this means a difficult matter. It's following the simple peshat reading of it, that it means a difficult matter, not a matter of a great person. Now, this is a midrash halacha, and the general structure of midrash halacha is to give a thesis and then question its own thesis and then explain why it got to that answer. And so it says, "Ataomer davar kashe o eno ela devarav shel gadol." Do you say that this pasuk refers to a difficult matter, or maybe it's a matter with regard to a great person? And the proof is from the pasuk later on, where it talks about the fulfillment. And so the fulfillment of what he does, we expect to be parallel to the instructions that Yitro gave in the first place. And over there in the fulfillment, it says a difficult matter, kasheh. So that explicitly, obviously, is referring to a difficult matter. And so since in the fulfillment it was talking about a difficult matter, so too in the instructions of Yitro, davar gadol refers to a difficult matter and not the matter of a great person. And so this is a challenge to Rav Ada bar Ahava. And the answer is, Hu damar ki haytana. Rav Ada bar Ahava can follow a different baraita authored by a different Tana. The Tanya davar gadol devarav shel gadol. You see in this second baraita, it interprets davar gadol to mean the matter of a great person. Ata omer devarav shel gadol o eno ela davar hakasheh. And that question itself as well. How do you know that this pasuk is referring to a judicial matter that has to do with a great person? Maybe it means a difficult matter. Oh, the pasuk later is already talking about a difficult matter, so we don't need another pasuk to say the same thing. So therefore this pasuk is referring to a matter of a great person. And now we ask, according to the Tana of the first baraita that says they're saying the same thing, why do we need a second pasuk, right? Just say they did whatever Yitro told them to. Why do you have to repeat all the details? Oh, we need one is for the commandment and one is for the fulfillment, to show that Yitro gave such good advice and they followed it and fulfilled it precisely as he said it. So yes, that's why we repeat it twice, once for the command and once for the fulfillment. V'idach, and what about the author of the second baraita? How could he learn two different things from these pesukim, that one of them is talking about difficult matter and one of them is talking about a matter of a great person? Doesn't he need one for the commandment and one for the fulfillment? And the answer to that is, Im ken nichtov o gadol gadol o kashe kashe, my gadol o my kashe shema'amina terte. If it was just about the commandment and the fulfillment, then it could use the same exact language in both places, use the word gadol in both places, or the word kashe in both places. How come at one time it uses kashe, and one time first it uses gadol and then uses kashe? To teach us two different things. The great difficult matters they're going to bring to Moshe, but not only difficult matters, also matters of a great person, like a Kohen Gadol, will be brought to Moshe. When Moshe is not around, then his role is fulfilled by the court of 71. Question. What if the ox of a Kohen Gadol goes out and kills? We saw above that a shor that deserves a death penalty gets judged by 23 judges, and we connected it, right? Vegam be'alav yumat, that just like a human being will be judged a death penalty by 23, so too the animal is also by 23, because we compare the ox to its owner. But that would be for a regular person. What about that of a Kohen Gadol? Kohen Gadol himself, if he gets a death penalty, he's going to be judged by 71. So maybe his ox also would be the same thing. Dil mitat be'alim dideh midaminan le, or dilma the mitat be'alim da'alma midaminan le. Do we compare the ox of a Kohen Gadol to the ox of a regular person, and so it would just be 23? Or do we compare the ox of a Kohen Gadol to its own owners, and in this case it's a Kohen Gadol, so then that would be 71. We don't actually answer the question of Rabbi Elazar. However, Abaye says, from the question of Rabbi Elazar, we can learn, since he only asked about Shorah, then we can learn something else. that his question only was about the ox of a Kohen Gadol, but his regular property, that Peshita, he does not have any question on that, right? How come he didn't ask about the regular property of a Kohen Gadol? Must be he has no question about it. So Peshita, isn't that obvious? That the property of a Kohen Gadol is going to just be with three people. Why would you think that the property of a Kohen Gadol might be of 71? You might need 71, even if he just has a monetary dispute. Mahu detema ho'il v'chatav kol hadavar hagadol kol davarav shel gadol kamashma lan. Well, I might have thought that because the pasuk that we just quoted regarding Yitro says all the matters of a great one. So I might have thought that meant any matter, even if it's just for $100, even if it's just for an ox or some item, a monetary thing. I might have thought that all matters of a great person are judged by 71. And that's why Abaye is coming to teach us, no, that can't be true, because Rabbi Elazar only asked about the ox specifically, that gets capital punishment is compared to the owner. Generally, that would be 23. And so the question is, what about for a Kohen Gadol? Is it 71 or 23? That is a good question. We leave that unanswered. But notice he didn't ask about any other matters. Therefore, any other monetary matters, even if it's a Kohen Gadol, would be judged by only three people. And Motzi'in, the next item in the Mishnah, says that if a king wants to go to an optional war, that's not a war of self-defense or something within the borders of Israel. That's milchemet chova or mitzvah that you have to do no matter what. But rather, this is an optional war of expansion to go and conquer land outside the land of Israel. The king cannot just decide to do that. This is a very serious matter. He's putting many, many people's lives at risk, his own soldiers. And so he has to consult and get the permission of the Sanhedrin of 71. What's the source? Amar Rabbi Abhuda, Amar Kerav Lifnei Elazar Kohen Ya'amod. So let's look at this pasuk inside. We're talking about the appointment of Yehoshua. We already saw this above, that Moshe would put his hands on him, and some of your glory will go upon him. And here's the key: Lifnei Elazar Kohen Ya'amod. So Yehoshua is going to stand before Elazar Kohen. V'sha'alo b'mishpat ha'urim lifnei Adonai. When he has a question, he will ask Elazar to check the urim v'tumim to get counsel. Al piv yeseu v'al piv yabo'u. Based on it or his word or its word, they will come and go. They will go to war and make peace. Hu v'chol b'nei Israel ito v'chol ha'edah he, and all of b'nei Israel and the Aedah and the congregation. All right, it does not say Sanhedrin explicitly here in this pasuk, so let's see how we derive it. So hu zeh melech v'chol b'nei Israel ito zeh meshuach milchama v'chol ha'edah zeh Sanhedrin. So what does this refer to? Who? That's the king himself. In this case, it's talking about Yehoshua. In the future, we'll be talking about a king. And the Bnei Israel that are with him, that's the Kohen that is anointed for war. He goes out to war, and he has a special role during the war. And Kol Ha'edah, at the end of the pasuk, is referring to the Sanhedrin. Therefore, you see that the king cannot decide to go on a war by himself, but rather he has to get permission from the Sanhedrin. Hold on, what is the role of the Sanhedrin, of this Aedah in this pasuk? Maybe you need the Sanhedrin so that through them they ask the Urim V'Tumim, but really you just have to ask the Urim V'Tumim. It's just that you need the Sanhedrin to help you ask the Urim V'Tumim, but maybe you don't need independent permission from the Sanhedrin itself. Rather, we're going to see the proof from the following drasha. There was a lyre hung above King David's bed, and when the northern wind would blow in the middle of the night, then it would make the lyre would make noise. Here's an ancient harp that would look like that. And then he would wake up. Miyad hayad David omed v'osek b'Torah ad she'ala amud hashachar. And King David would learn Torah for the whole second half of the night until dawn arrived. Kevan she'ala amud hashachar nichnesu chachamei Yisrael etzlo. Once the dawn arrived, then the sages of Israel would come to consult with King David. Amru lo Adonenu melech hamecha Yisrael tzarichin lefarnasa. And they told him whatever problems were going on, and they told him them that the people need jobs. They need to sustain themselves. Very difficult to make a living. They should go and get food from each other. Let them go do trade and work for each other. And that way they get food. They told them that a lion is not satisfied with just a handful of food, meaning there's not enough food, and a cistern cannot be filled just from its mouth. In other words, you have a cistern. If you want to fill it up, so it does have a hole that's open to the sky, so when it rains, it will go in there. But that's not going to be sufficient to fill it up. In order to fill up a cistern, you need to make an aqueduct system so that all the water that falls all around it will be channeled into the cistern. And so that all that is a mashal. The nimshal is that the land of Israel is very small and there's just not enough produce to feed all of the people within it. Even if we trade and help each other, still not sufficient. We need to go outside the borders of Israel to go and import some things and get more food that way. Okay, go take up arms and we're going to go on an expansionary battle, so that we can go and conquer more territory outside. And so immediately they didn't just go out to war. First, they had to go and ask the king's advisor, Achitophel, and they asked the Sanhedrin, and they also asked Urim v'Tumim. What you see from here is that you have to ask multiple stages of people. You have to go through all the branches of government. And so one of them is, in fact, asking the Sanhedrin, and that's done independently of asking the Urim v'Tumim. Amar Rav Yosef, my Kera, Rav Yosef says, what is the derivation for this nice Agadah? And the Pasuk says in Divrei Hamim, V'acharei Achitophel ben Ayahu ben Yehoyada v'Ebiatar v'Sar seba lamelech Yoav. The Pasuk is listing the various generals and important officials in King David's government. After Achitophel ben Ayah and Ebiatar, and the general of the king's army, Yoav. Achitophel ze Yoetz. Achitophel, he was the advisor. We see elsewhere he's called the advisor. Benayahu ben Yehoyada zo Sanhedrin. Benayahu was the head of the Sanhedrin. Ebiatar elu Urim v'Tumim. Ebiatar was the Kohen, so he's in charge of the Urim v'Tumim. V'chen hu omer u'Benayahu ben Yehoyada ala kireti v'ala pileti. Where do you see that Benayahu was in charge of the Sanhedrin? There's no explicit pasuk about that. But rather we derive it from this pasuk here in Sefer Shemuel, that Benayahu was in charge over the Kireti and Peleti, certain groups, literally certain groups of people. But this midrash is taking Kireti and Peleti both as a reference to the Sanhedrin. Why is the Sanhedrin nicknamed Kireti and Peleti? Kireti shekortin debrehen, Kireti karet, meaning they are decisive. They are decisive about their matters. Peleti shemuflain b'maasehen. Peleti, like Pele, that their deeds are wondrous. Everybody looks at what the Sanhedrin does and says, that's amazing. Look how wise they are. Look how great is their leadership. And after that, they mention the general of the king, which is Yoav. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bered Rav Ada v'amri la, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar avudimi. Ma'ikera ura chevodi ura nebel v'chinora ira shachar. And now, what's the source for that? The part of the story that King David wakes up in the middle of the night. The pasuk is from Tehillim that says, "Awaken, my glory! Awaken, awake, harp and lyre! I will awaken the dawn." So that's referring to King David wanting to wake up early before the sun rises in order to study Torah. Ben Mosifin Alair, the Mishnah teaches that we do not add to the boundaries of Jerusalem or to the temple courtyard unless we have permission from a court of 71 judges. The Sanhedrin. What's the source? Amar Rav Shimi bar Chiya amar kera kechol asher ani mar'eh otecha et tavnit hamishkan v'chen ta'asu ladorot habain. We learn it from the pasuk that Hashem tells Moshe, you should follow everything I showed you regarding the pattern of the Mishkan and all the vessels. And Hashem tells Moshe, you have to make everything precisely as I show you. And that refers not only to Moshe's time, but also to the future. Anything that has to do with the Mishkan, and by extension, anything that has to do with the Bet HaMikdash and its borders and Yerushalayim and so on, have to be done based on the Sanhedrin. At the time of the Mishkan, it's based on whatever Hashem tells Moshe. And then in the future, the Sanhedrin is in place of Moshe. Me'ativ rava kol haklim asher asa Moshe meshichatan mikadeshan mekan ve'elach abodatan mechanachtan ve'amai nema v'chen tasu ladorot habain. Rava challenges this derasha from a Baraita. The Baraita teaches that all of the vessels that Moshe made, can you make the vessel, but then had you consecrate it by anointing it. Moshe would pour oil on the vessels, and now they were holy and available to use. However, that was only a one-time commandment, only for the time of Moshe. In the future, you can always make new vessels in the future Mishkan, in the future Bet HaMikdash. But in the future, you do not anoint them with oil, but rather using them for a holy purpose. That's what consecrates them. So there's a difference between the law at first and the law for all generations. And here's the challenge. Why should it be different? Why don't we say v'chen ta'asu? That was a derasha that Rav Shimi brought, right? V'chen ta'asu, that means for all generations. According to your derasha, the law for the first generation should be the same for all generations, and therefore, for all generations, if you make a new vessel, you should have to anoint it with oil. But this Baraita does not say so. Shaneh hatam damar kera vayim shachem vaykadesh otam b'mshicha v'lo dorot b'mshicha. And the answer is, no, the vessels are different because it says Moshe anointed them and sanctified them. Them refers specifically to the vessels that he made that require anointing, but in the future they do not require anointing. So, therefore, v'chen ta'asu does in general mean that whatever was done in the first generation is also done in future generations, except for the vessels, because it says otam. But now we ask further, okay, so hold on. I understand that the first generation vessels are different from the future because it says otam, but I can learn the derasha differently. That otam, meaning the first generation, has to be consecrated with oil. But for future generations, maybe you have a choice and you can anoint it with oil, or you could just start using it. Why'd you say that in future generations you don't use oil at all, you just have to start using it? Amar Rav Papa, Amar Kera, Sherisharetu Bam Bakodesh, Hakatub Telaan Besherut. Rav Papa, that says that's because of a different pasuk that says the vessels that you will serve in the sanctuary. So you see that making them available, consecrating them is dependent on using them. It says specifically Sherisharetu Bam that they will be used. So it's the using them in a holy way is what sanctifies them. Ela otam lamali. If you have this pasuk that says in the future generations you're going to use them, then why do I need otam as a limiting? Limiting to what? And the answer is, if you didn't have the word otam to say the first generation is different from all the others, then I would have thought that in future generations you have to do both. You have to anoint them because it says v'chen ta'asu. V'chen ta'asu teaches that whatever you did the first generation you have to do in the future, and that was anointing with oil. And I would have thought that then you also need to sanctify them by using them for a holy purpose because of this pasuk asher yisharetu bam. That's why katav rachamana otam b'mshicha v'lo dorot b'mshicha. That's why the pasuk says otam, to tell you that otam, only the first generation vessels are anointed with oil, but that stops and that is not necessary to do in future generations. In future generations, if you have a bowl and then you just go and collect blood from a sacrifice in it, so just by using it in that way, it becomes consecrated and there's no need to anoint it with oil. Next, the Mishnah said that in order to make lower courts of 23, you need the high court of 71. Minalan, what's the source? Kedash kachan b'Moshe deuke Sanhedraot u'Moshe b'mkom shibim v'chad ka'eh. We saw regarding Moshe, he's the one that when Yitro told him that the advice, he went ahead and did it, and he established lower courts, and Moshe is in the place of a court of 71. So in the future, if you ever want to make another court of 23, you need a court of 71 to establish it. Tenor Rabbanan, and now we quote a related Baraita, Minayin shema'amidin shoftim l'Yisrael, Talmud Omar, shofetim titen. Let's look at the pasuk inside. It says, shofetim v'shotirim titen lecha b'chol she'arecha, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishpatecha. So the Mishnah, the pasuk talks about two different titles, judges and officers, and it says you have to place them in she'arecha, in your cities, And it also says shevatecha, in your tribes. So what this Braita is going to do is going to distribute it and say you need both types of, or both officers and judges in your tribes and in your cities. That's the basic idea. Okay, so how do you know that you need judges over Israel in general? Because it says shoftim titen. Shoterim lisaminayin tamodomar shoterim titen. How do you know that you need officers? Because it says place officers. Shofetim lechol shevet vashevet minayin. How do you know that every tribe needs judges? You can't just have judge a court in one tribe and not in another tribe and make them travel. Tamodomar shofetim lishpatecha, because it says judges in every tribe. Shoterim lechol shevet vashevet minayin tamodomar shoterim lishpatecha. And you need officers also in every tribe, because it says shotirim lishpatecha, shofetim lechol ir va'ir minayin. How do you know you need that judges in not just in a tribe, but every city needs a court? Talmud Omar shofetim lisharecha, because it says shoftim and then it says lisharecha. The pasuk does not actually say the word lisharecha; it says lishpatecha, but we're taking the lamed and we're just applying it to make the grammar read smoothly here. Shotirim lechol ir ve'ir minayin. Talmud Omar shotirim lisharecha. And how you know you need officers for every city, because it says shoterim, and we apply that also to lisharecha. Rabbi Yehuda omer, echad memone al kulan shenema titen lecha. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to have one person who's in charge of everybody. Meaning you need a hierarchy. You can't just have lots of different appointments that are not related to each other, but has to be a single institution that's responsible for all the appointments, so that they're all organized. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer lishpatecha v'shafetu misva bashevet ladun et shivto. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, since it says the words back to back, lishpatecha and v'shafetu, we learn from that there's a mitzvah for the tribe to judge itself. In other words, you shouldn't have a judge from one tribe judging a different tribe, but rather each tribe, kind of like in the United States of America, you have state law, and each state has its own courts and judges its own citizens. So too, every tribe will have its own courts that will judge its own citizens. And then, yes, you also have a Sanhedrin Gadol that will be like a Supreme Court over the entire country, but that's if it goes up to the Supreme Court, if the lower courts don't know. But otherwise, each tribe should be independent. The next part of Mishnah says that we do not declare a city to be an idolatrous city unless you have the whole Sanhedrin. What's the source? Amar Rabbi Chiya bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Oshaya, Amar Kira ve'oseta, et ha'isha hu or et ha'isha hi, ish v'isha tamosi lisharecha, v'ya tamosi kol ha'ir kula lisharecha. The Rasha we already saw previously on this staff, because the pasuk says regarding an individual who does avodah zarah, says we take that man or that woman out to the gate, and we learn from here that an individual man or woman you bring out to your gate. To your gate means 23 judges, but a whole city you cannot bring out to the gate of 23 judges. Rather, you need the Sanhedrin of 71. And osin iranidachat basefar ma'itama mikirbecha marachamana velo min hasefar. We do not declare a city to be an iranidachat if it's on the frontier, on the border of Israel. What's the source? Because the pasuk says mikirbecha, from within you, from meaning an inside town and not a frontier town. Velo shalosh are hanidachat tichtib achat, aval osin achat o shetayim tichtib arecha. We do not make three cities that are all close by each other, even if they are doing avodah zarah and fit the other criteria. If you already had one or two in this area, we're not going to make a third nearby. How do you know? Because the pasuk says one of your cities, achat she'arecha. So we don't make three, but we make one or two. And how do you know that two is okay? Because it says arecha, plural, and so that plural is referring to three or more. But one or two is okay. Tenor banan achat velo shalosh, and that's the Baraita elaborates on this Darasha. When it says one of your cities, it means one, but not three. Ta omer achat velo shalosh or eno ela achat velo shatayim. Wait, isn't it more logical to say one of your cities means only one, but not even two together? Kishu omer arecha hare shatayim amur. But then there's a plural that says cities, so that means there one or two is permitted to to make into Ir Hanidachat. Hani mekayim achat v'lo shalosh. So what do we learn from 1? It means 1, but not 3. So 1 and 2. 1 or 2 cities, you can make Ir Hanidachat, but 3 cities near each other, you cannot. Zimnin amara bebetin echad hu de'en osin ha b'shnayim u'shlosha batedin osin. Sometimes the Rav would elaborate on this halacha and he would say, one betin, one Sanhedrin cannot make many cities into Ir Hanidachat. However, 2 or 3 batedin can, meaning if this generation of judges on the Sanhedrin died out, and then some years later there's it's only one Sanhedrin, but it's all new members of the Sanhedrin, then they can go ahead and make another Ir Hanidachat, even though it'll be by that time 3. When the limitation means one betin can make 1 or 2, but not 3. 3 cities into Ir Hanidachat, but over another generation, then they will be able to. But sometimes Rav taught it differently and said, even if you have another Sanhedrin, even after a long time, even after 1 to 2 generations or 3 generations, we never make another Ir Hanidachat. So this is like actually forever. If there's in this one area 1 or 2 Ir Hanidachats, then even 100, 200 years later, they cannot make another one in that area forever. What is the source, or what's the reason here rather? Mishum korcha, because that will have pockets of uninhabited areas. Korcha is like a bald spot. So in the land of Israel, if you have one city that's destroyed, that's bad enough. If you're going to have 3 cities all next to each other that are all desolate, that's not good to have a bald spot of uninhabited area in the middle of the land of Israel. And Resh Lakish says, therefore it makes sense that you cannot do 3 cities in one area. But if it's spread out and you do one up north, one down south, one over there, then that's okay. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you cannot make such desolate cities all over the place, even if they're separated in space. He's more machmir or mekel to have less Ir Hanidachats because that will also mean it's pockmarked to have, even if you have 3 cities that are not close to each other, still that's going to be a lot of uninhabited areas. So there's smaller bald spots, but there's a lot of them, so you can't have 3 even altogether. Tanya Kevated Rabbi Yochanan, we have a beraita that supports Rabbi Yochanan, En osin shalosh ayarot menudachot be'eretz Yisrael, avad osin otan shetayim, kegon achat b'Yehuda v'achat b'Galil. Beraita teaches that you cannot make 3 Ir Hanidachat cities in the land of Israel, but you can make 2 of them. For example, if you have 1 in Judea and 1 in the Galilee, that's 2, you can have that. Aval shetayim b'Yehuda u'shtaim b'Galil en osin, but you cannot have 2 in Judea or 2 in the Galilee. So we see that even if they're separate in space and they're in various different regions, then you can have, 2, but you can't have 3, even if the 3 are spread out. That's exactly what Rabbi Yochanan says. And within one region, like Judea, you can only have 1 and not even 2. וסמוכה לספר אפילו אחת אין עושים, מה טעמה שמא ישמעו נוכרים ויחריבו את ארץ ישראל. And if the village is near the border, then you cannot make even 1. What's the reason for that? Because the enemy countries will hear about that and they will come and destroy Israel. If they hear there's an opening, right, there's a destroyed city, it's all desolate there, then that will be an easy place to come and penetrate. And once they do that, they'll come in to the land of Israel and take it over. And so the border towns, unfortunately, as we saw on October 7th, the border towns are really the front lines. They're the fortifications for the rest of Israel. And so you cannot make it, even if even if this border town is in fact guilty of Avodah Zarah, still for national security, we cannot go and destroy them. Now we asked just about this last reason over here. How come you're giving a reason for national security? Why don't you derive it as we derived it before, that the pasuk says from within your midst and not from the border? And the answer is Rabbi Shimon Hida, that Ishtama Dikra. This beraita is authored by Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon says we can give reasons for the mitzvot. So it wasn't denying that that's the derivation. There's 2 things. things, a derivation and a reason. The derivation is in fact from the pasuk mikir becha. But what's the reason that the Torah says you can only do it in an inner town, but not a border town? Oh, well, that is because of national security. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.